Friends, you and I have been talking Sport Compact a lot as of late. We recently took another look at a perennial favorite. We drove something rather surprising from Hyundai, and then we caught up with an old friend of the show who built one at Nissan's Arizona Test Center. Well, Nissan, they ain't done yet, and this one, well, it's not just any old Nissan. Now, if I'm getting the memo correctly, it says Nismo right about there. That means you and I need to unpack what's underneath there. A 1.6-liter four-cylinder direct-injected turbocharged gasoline engine puts out 188 horsepower, which comes in at a relatively aggressive 5,600 RPM and 177 pound-feet of torque, which comes in at a very low 1,600 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 5,200 RPM. Right about now, you're feeling a bit of deja vu, and that is no trickery on the behalf of my editor or shooting. It is because that is the same engine and the same output as the SR Turbo we drove back in Georgia. So right about now, you and I should take this engine and see how it works in a different package out there. Okay, yeah, we're going in the wrong direction, but if it says that on the back, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Okay, so I will definitely give it a check for fun factor right out of the gate. Now let's put some power into it, because what you and I really need to unpack is, does all of this work with that amount of power? Was there a reason that Nissan decided not to up the power? Much like in the Lotus world, you didn't get really more than 17-inch wheels for a reason, because it was designed specifically for that balance with the 17-inch wheel. So is the power the same thing here? So let's put our foot into it. Got a couple of nice switchbacks here. Let's downshift, and then we'll come out of it with a little power. Oh, hey now. Okay, so you guys need to know that we've had a lot of rain here in the California Republic over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. So what you're seeing is all of these rocks from mudslides. It was heavy duty rain. And you know, it sucks when we're rained out, but we really need the rain. So I really wasn't fussed going home because we got rained out. Literally, I was shooting the tech review and the sky opened in the middle of one. Actually, it was the last take. It was the closing, the outro, and we just had to pack it in. Anyway, let's get back to putting some power to the ground here. Got a nice little straight. Actually, no, let's third gear. Put our foot into it. You know, it's got plenty of power. It's not like it's a situation where you feel like it's underpowered. So do I get angry at Nissan for not giving us more power here? From a cerebral point of view, no. Look at this. I'm going around turns faster than I should, and there's still plenty of power coming out of a turn, and I'm not even doing downshifts to really work it that hard. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's try the downshift here and see how we do. A little bit more responsive when you get into that second gear. Now let's go around a declining radius turn with an uphill. So this is, and let's stay in third, and this is really a good test of it. Okay, so when you hit it with some complex, like change in the plane of motion as well as a turn, yeah, it could use a little bit more power there, but how many people are going to really do that with this type of car? More than a regular Sentra, but again, from a cerebral point of view, yes, it works. I'm not mad at them. But from just a sport compact segment, I really would like an extra 25 horse. Okay, so the engine isn't any different, but it would stand to reason if the folks at Nissan slap a NISMO badge on this thing, something's gotta be different. Well, there is, and it's all relating to driving dynamics. So remember when we drove the SR Turbo back in Georgia, there was a whole bunch of things that changed courtesy of Gary. You know, he threw in stabilizer bars, increased the brakes, even strengthened the whole car. Well, all of that made the trip from the SR Turbo, but then Gary and the folks in Arizona, they decided to completely throw out the dampers on the SR Turbo and come up with not only different dampers, but how they're set up are completely different. And then there's the wheels, and this is kind of funny to say, largest wheels ever on a Sentra, 18-inch wheels on a Sentra, go figure. So how does all this work out on the road? Okay, so now as we get to this portion of the road, it gets quite a bit more challenging here. And let's put our foot into it a bit more. Please don't try this at home. And this is where the Nismo is head and shoulders above the SR Turbo. The SR Turbo, you and I would be over in that ditch, over that embankment. Now let's try this again, going on a beautiful declining radius turn on an uphill. Again, I'm going to stay in third gear like I did before, and this is where it gets a little challenging. But you know what? Much more composure, especially in the rear there. Now there really isn't an adjustable suspension here. It's a very basic setup, but what you get is, let's put it around this turn here a little bit faster, and notice there isn't any like roll on the outside rear wheel, which is what I would expect in a front wheel drive sport compact car. You don't get that at all here. If I'm really being pedantic, you get a little bit of lean on that side, and that's really just the size of the car and how tall the body is. If you look at the design of this car, as compared to, say, the Elantra, this is just a little bit taller than that design, so there's a little bit more weight to lean over there. Okay, now that we've unpacked that, I want to try something that I never tried with you guys. There's no one behind me. This is a deserted road. This is my top secret test track here. Let's put our foot into it. You and I are going to try out those bigger brakes. You ready? Really not a lot of dive. And that's one of the biggest things you would get in a front-wheel drive car with that much weight over the front axle. And that is, again, one of the biggest differences. Man, you can definitely smell the brakes. But that is one of the biggest differences between the Nismo and the regular SR. Much more composure with those different set of dampers that they've put in here. Okay, so there's one more piece of business that you and I need to discuss in the transition from SR Turbo to Nismo Sentra, and that is the way the vehicle looks. Frankly, I'm not that excited when people put spoilers and all sorts of stuff on the car, but here it was tastefully restrained in the best Shiro style that we can come up with. The front end is different, the rear end is different, and of course, those 18-inch wheels, and then there's a slight rocker panel extension at the bottom. Rather than me tell you, let me get out of your way. And pay no attention to the very dark storm clouds that are forming. Okay, so let's you and I try a more tame road and unpack some things here. Specifically, non-performance related things, as well as how does this stack up in terms of pulling power and driving dynamics against some of the obvious competition. First off, non-performance related things, the fuel economy. At the end of the day, this is a compact class car, which means fuel economy is prized over most everything else, and that's why this car was designed the way it was before they envisioned a performance version. So I've been driving this thing, as you can see, rather hard around town. I've been doing a lot of like in-town driving and driving, for lack of a better term, like New York. And as a result, I've been doing 27 average MPG, which is incredible when you think this is almost 200 horsepower, and I've been having a lot of fun driving the car. So that is fantastic. It ekes out the Volkswagen GTI. Remember that Autobahn car I just recently drove? It ekes that car out by like I think 1 or 1.5 MPG. I didn't get enough time in that Elantra Sport to really talk MPG, and frankly, Nathan and I beat the crap out of that car. So if it got better than 20 MPG, I'd be surprised. Now let's unpack pulling power as it relates to the overall class. I don't think you're going to be shocked. The GTI kind of outclasses this. It's got more power, even without the performance pack, and it's only going to get more power because they've just done a mid-cycle refresh. So it's going to be an even bigger delta between this and that. So between a power, just pulling power perspective, the GTI clearly outclasses this, and this could use more power in that instance. And then there's the driving dynamics. I think this is the most important part of it. From a driving dynamics point of view, again, let's look at this as a spectrum like I have in the past between this and the Mazda and the Focus and even the Chevy Cruze, because what's happened is everything's changed. You know, the Volkswagen's always been at the top, but like Chevy and Ford went from here and kind of went to the top, and then Mazda's always been at the top, and then like Hyundai was at the bottom. Well, now we have a sport compact from Hyundai in this class. We've got the GTI, we've got this. I gotta believe that Chevy's gonna do something to respond to this. But in terms of driving dynamics, I'm gonna put it on the spectrum. The Volkswagen and the Mazda are still up here. And that's not even a Mazda Speed 3 in terms of sharpness. Imagine when it gets to the Mazda Speed 3. And then there's that Hyundai Elantra Sport, and I think that's the wild card in this whole discussion. Like, if I had never driven the Elantra Sport and just this against the GTI, I would still say the GTI is a better driving dynamics entry. But now that the Hyundai Elantra Sport is there, I would put on the spectrum, you've got the GTI, you've got the Nissan NISMO here, and then you've got the Elantra right in the middle. Actually, probably upper middle on that driving dynamic spectrum. And that's because whatever that guy from BMW did to the rear end of that Elantra transforms the car and even puts it above this. I do need to say something here. At the end of the day, Gary and the guys at ATC and whoever else was involved in this project of making a Nismo out of a Sentra when it never was intended to be a Nismo, they did a phenomenal job in changing the driving dynamics from the basic SR setup to this. That said, I do think this thing absolutely needs more power, especially in light of the much stiffer competition that is coming at down the road. So in summary, what do we got? On the driving dynamics side of things, a huge improvement. On the power side of things, the only way I could say this is, in the interest of full disclosure, a missed opportunity. Now, this, as you have seen today, is not an underpowered car. It is quick, it is fun to throw on corners, it is much more capable than the SR Turbo. However, I look at this beyond a cerebral idea or a cerebral approach, because you're not buying a car like this because you have cerebral intentions. You're buying this because you want a quick car. And you're looking at the segment, and in that segment, it's not just coming in at the bottom of the segment now, it's coming in to a segment that is moving. Like if you look at the mid-cycle refresh of the GTI, it's moving from here to here, and now you have that new Elantra Sport that's coming in here, and it's really more above the middle of the class than in the middle of the class. So that puts the Sentra down here at only 188 horsepower. And again, not an underpowered car, but I feel a missed opportunity. And I don't quite understand what Nissan's got in store for this. Maybe there's an RS coming with like 350 horsepower. It's going to compete against the Focus, but I don't think that's the case. In any instance, I need to turn this around to you guys, and I want to ask you the very specific question of which would you choose. And I'm going to limit it to just 3 cars. Obviously, this one, or the perennial favorite, the GTI, or now kind of my new favorite, and I would have a hard time saying no to a GTI for this, the Elantra Sport that we just recently drove. And I don't want to know which one you would choose. I want to know which one you would choose, why you would choose it, what you currently drive, and most importantly, what region of the world you hail from. Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with 2 things. Number 1, make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which will have an impact on your Season 7 viewing coming up in January. And oh, by the way, we are live on 5 international airlines. And oh, maybe you should subscribe to us on YouTube to see more of this. And then number 2, a fun fact. So this wasn't the only thing that I did this weekend. Yes, I went flying if you follow me on Instagram, but the other thing you would have seen on Instagram is pictures of my older cars. You see, us folks here in California, though it looks like we have just oodles of space, we don't. I live in like a postage stamp sized place, have since the past 10 years. In fact, I think I am in the Guinness Book of World Records for being the only person to move from Manhattan, NYC to Los Angeles and live in a physically smaller place. But in any event, I have fixed that now, and all my stuff is in one place. It all arrived about a month ago, but I've been traveling, so I haven't been able to unpack it. But I finally unpacked it and found very embarrassing pictures of myself, which some of them are on Instagram, but I also found pictures of some of my old cars, which now I am posting to Instagram. So go and check me out there, MotoManTV all in word, MotoManTV all in word, and see my history of my cars in the past, even in my days when I had a beard. Yes, really, I had a beard. Until I see you next time, bis später.